So to put it in the negative, God had to be ruled out of scientific consideration altogether. Now, if God is ruled out of consideration, then you can't say God did any creating. So then nature has to do the creating with its own resources. That being the case, then something more or less like Darwin's theory has to be true as a matter of logic. You don't need evidence to come to that conclusion. And in fact, many Darwinists have made precisely that argument. Richard Dawkins, the world's most famous Darwinist today, says that if life exists on distant planets, where we can never go and make observations, we know it must have evolved by the Darwinian method, random variations in natural selection. And how do we know that? Well, says Dawkins, what would be your alternative? So that's how he can conclude that without any observations whatsoever, we know that life evolved by Darwin's method of natural selection on those distant planets. There's nothing else that could have happened. That attitude helps to explain, I think, why the biologists were so easily convinced by, for example, the peppered moth observations that this same process that made the peppered moths shift in color, the population shift, would account for how you get moths and trees and birds and scientific observers in the first place. Likewise, the Stanley Miller experiment, with the electrical charges producing the amino acids, it left something out, which is that it takes more than amino acids to make something come alive. You can buy amino acids from a chemical supply house, and you can mix them together in a dish for quite as long as you like, and I guarantee you that no living organism is going to emerge. So this production of the chemical components was certainly only a first step towards the production of life. The Darwinists conceded this. They understood that. But they said that it was enough to show the first step, because they knew on independent grounds that it must be possible to produce life by a purely natural process from non-living chemicals. How did they know that? Nothing else could have happened, could it? What would be your alternative? God created? Well, we know the answer to that by now, don't we? So it's not a question of whether life evolved from non-life by some chemical process. It's just a question of precisely what it was. And see, Stanley Miller had identified how you could make one step, and that was enough to say you could go all the rest of the way for sure. So